A young waiter removes his apron for the final time, his hands trembling not from fear but from the burning injustice that just unfolded before dozens of witnesses. 24 hours later, that same restaurant would have a new owner, and the waiter's life would change forever. This is the story of Kael Winters, and how one simple act of human kindness exposed the ugliest side of prejudice, while revealing the incredible power of compassion. The golden chandeliers of Romano's fine dining cast their warm glow across pristine white tablecloths, creating an atmosphere of elegance that had attracted the city's elite for over 2 decades. Crystal glasses clinked softly as well-dressed patrons savored their expensive meals, their conversations mixing with the gentle classical music that flowed through the restaurant like a river of sophistication. This was the world where Kael Winters had worked for the past 3 years, navigating between tables with the grace of someone who understood that every detail mattered. Kael wasn't like the other waiters who worked at Romano's. While they came from privileged backgrounds and treated this job as a stepping stone to bigger things, Kael was fighting for his family's survival. Every tip he earned went toward his younger sister Melody's medical treatment. She was battling a rare autoimmune condition that required expensive medications, and their insurance barely covered half the costs. At 28, Kael had already sacrificed his own dreams of becoming a teacher to ensure his sister had a chance at a normal life. His colleagues never knew about his struggles. He carried himself with quiet dignity, always professional, always kind. On that fateful Tuesday evening, the restaurant buzzed with its usual energy. Kael moved between his tables with practiced efficiency, his warm smile genuine despite the weight of unpaid medical bills pressing on his shoulders. He had just finished taking an order from a table of business executives when he noticed something that made him pause. Near the window, at a small table tucked away in the corner, sat a young boy who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. The child was African American, with bright, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the restaurant around him. He was dressed neatly in a small button-down shirt and dark pants, but something about his posture suggested he felt out of place in the elegant surroundings. The boy's name was Baptiste, though Kael didn't know this yet. What struck Kael most was the expression on the child's face. Zion sat perfectly still, his hands folded in his lap, staring at the menu with a mixture of confusion and longing. His stomach grumbled audibly, and Kael noticed how the boy's eyes lingered on the food being served to nearby tables. It was clear that Zion was hungry, but something was preventing him from ordering. The other waiters had walked past the table multiple times without acknowledging the boy's presence. This wasn't entirely unusual at Romano's, where the staff had been trained to focus on the restaurant's more affluent clientele, but Kael couldn't ignore the sight of a hungry child, regardless of the circumstances. Approaching the table with his characteristic warmth, Kael knelt down to be at eye level with Zion. "Hello there, young man. I'm Kael. Are you waiting for someone, or can I help you with something?" Zion's eyes lit up at being addressed directly. "Hi, Mr. Kael. I'm Zion. I'm waiting for my daddy, but he's in a really important meeting upstairs. He told me to wait here and that someone would bring me food, but—" His voice trailed off, and he looked down at his hands. "But what, buddy?" Kael asked gently, sensing the boy's hesitation. "I don't think anyone wants to help me," Zion whispered, his voice so quiet that Kael had to lean in to hear him. "I've been sitting here for almost an hour, and people keep looking at me funny. Maybe I don't belong in a place like this." Kael's heart broke at the vulnerability in the child's voice. He glanced around the restaurant and noticed the stares and whispered conversations among some of the staff and patrons. The realization of what was happening hit him like a physical blow. This child was being ignored and made to feel unwelcome because of the color of his skin. "Listen to me, Zion," Kael said, his voice firm but gentle. "You belong anywhere you want to be. You're a smart, polite young man, and anyone would be lucky to serve you. Now, what would you like to eat? And don't worry about anything else." Zion's face transformed with relief and joy. "Really, you mean it?" "I absolutely mean it," Kael replied, pulling out his notepad. What sounds good to you? For the next few minutes, Kael and Zion discussed the menu options. The boy was articulate and curious, asking thoughtful questions about different dishes. Kael found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation, impressed by Zion's intelligence and good manners. When Zion admitted he wasn't sure what his father had arranged for payment, Kael made a decision that would change both their lives. "You know what, Zion? This meal is on me. Consider it a welcome gift to Romano's," Kael said, ruffling the boy's hair gently. "Are you sure? Daddy always says I should pay for things," Zion replied, his eyes wide with surprise. "Your daddy sounds like a smart man, and I'm sure he raised you right. But sometimes, when we meet someone special, we want to do something nice for them. You seem pretty special to me." As Kael placed the order and brought Zion his food, he noticed the boy's excitement was infectious. Zion talked about his dreams of becoming a scientist, his love for books, and his admiration for his father's work. Kael found himself sharing stories about his own childhood, his sister, and his belief that kindness was the most important thing people could offer each other. "My daddy says that how people treat you when they don't have to be nice tells you everything about who they are," Zion said between bites of his pasta. "You're a really good person, Mr. Kael. Your daddy is a wise man, and you're a pretty amazing kid yourself," Kael replied, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the restaurant's ambient lighting. Their conversation was interrupted by a harsh voice that cut through the restaurant's gentle atmosphere like a knife. "Winters, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Vincent Romano, the restaurant's manager and the owner's son, strode across the dining room with fury written across his face. Vincent was a man in his early 40s who had inherited his position rather than earned it. He was known for his volatile temper and his obsession with maintaining what he called the restaurant's standards. Unfortunately, those standards often included ugly prejudices that he tried to disguise as business sense. "I'm serving a customer, Mr. Romano," Kael replied calmly, though he could feel his heart rate increasing. "This is not a customer," Vincent hissed, his voice low but venomous. "This is some kid who wandered in off the street. We have paying customers who need attention, and you're wasting time playing games." Zion's face fell, and Kael saw the hurt flash across the boy's features. The child began to shrink back into his chair, the confidence and joy from moments before evaporating like morning mist. "Mr. Romano, this young man is absolutely a customer. He's waiting for his father who's conducting business upstairs. I'm simply ensuring he's comfortable while he waits." "I don't care if he's waiting for the president," Vincent snapped, his voice rising enough to draw attention from nearby tables. "Look around you, Winters. Do you see any other children in here? Do you see any other people like him? There's a reason for that. This is Romano's fine dining, not some neighborhood diner." The racist implications of Vincent's words hung in the air like toxic smoke. Kael felt his anger building, but he forced himself to remain calm for Zion's sake. The boy was now staring at his plate, his small hands trembling slightly. "Mr. Romano, I think there's been a misunderstanding," Kael said, carefully. "This is Zion, and he's been nothing but polite and well-mannered. He's exactly the kind of customer we should be proud to serve. Are you questioning my judgment?" Vincent's face was turning red with rage. "Are you telling me how to run my restaurant?" "I'm telling you that treating a child with kindness and respect is never wrong," Kael replied, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him. The confrontation had attracted the attention of other diners, who watched the scene unfold with a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Some seemed sympathetic to Kael's position, while others appeared to agree with Vincent's harsh stance. The restaurant's elegant atmosphere was being poisoned by the ugly display of prejudice. "You want to know what's wrong?" Vincent's voice reached a crescendo. "What's wrong is that you're putting your misguided sense of charity above the comfort of our real customers. What's wrong is that you're giving away free food to people who don't belong here. What's wrong is that you're making Romano's look like some kind of soup kitchen." Zion looked up at Kael with tears in his eyes. "Mr. Kael, maybe I should go. I don't want to cause trouble." "You're not causing any trouble, buddy," Kael said softly, placing a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. "You have every right to be here." "No, he doesn't. Vincent declared triumphantly. "And neither do you. You're fired, Winters. Clean out your locker and get out of my restaurant." The words hit Kael like a physical blow. He looked around the dining room at the faces staring back at him, some shocked, others embarrassed, a few nodding in approval. He thought about Melody's medical bills, about the rent due next week, about the future that was crumbling around him. But when he looked down at Zion's tear-streaked face, he knew he had made the right choice. "I'm sorry this happened, Zion," Kael said quietly, ignoring Vincent's continued ranting. "But I want you to remember something, okay? You are smart, you are kind, and you are worthy of respect wherever you go. Don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise." Zion nodded, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "Thank you, Mr. Kael. I won't forget." As Kael removed his apron and walked toward the exit, he heard Vincent addressing the dining room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for that unfortunate display. At Romano's we maintain certain standards, and we will not compromise them for anyone." The next morning, Kael woke up in his small apartment with the crushing weight of unemployment pressing down on him. He had spent the night calculating and recalculating his finances, trying to figure out how long he could survive without income. Melody's medication alone cost $800 a month, and he had maybe 3 weeks of savings left. Despite his desperate situation, Kael found himself thinking about Zion throughout the morning. He wondered if the boy had been able to enjoy the rest of his meal, if his father had arrived, if the child would carry the scars of yesterday's humiliation. The thought of Zion believing he didn't belong anywhere filled Kael with renewed anger at the injustice of it all. Around noon, Kael made a decision that surprised even him. He dressed in his best clothes and walked back to Romano's fine dining. He wasn't sure what he hoped to accomplish, but he felt the need to face the aftermath of his dismissal head-on. Perhaps some of the other staff would offer support, or maybe he could convince Vincent to reconsider his decision. When he arrived at the restaurant, Kael noticed an unusual level of activity. Several expensive cars were parked outside, and there seemed to be some kind of meeting taking place inside. Through the windows, he could see Vincent gesticulating wildly while speaking to a group of well-dressed individuals. As Kael approached the entrance, he saw Vincent rush outside, his face flushed with what looked like panic rather than anger. The manager was followed by a tall, distinguished African-American man in an impeccably tailored suit. The man had the kind of presence that commanded attention, carrying himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge. "Mr. Baptiste, please, let's discuss this reasonably," Vincent was saying, his voice taking on a pleading quality that Kael had never heard before. "There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Romano," the man replied, his voice calm but firm. "The transaction is complete. My lawyers have already filed the paperwork." Kael's heart began to race as he recognized something familiar about the man's features. The intelligent eyes, the strong jawline, the way he carried himself with quiet dignity. This had to be Zion's father. Dr. Marcus Baptiste was indeed Zion's father, though Kael didn't yet know the full extent of the man's accomplishments. Marcus had grown up in poverty in the inner city, raised by a single mother who cleaned office buildings to support her family. Despite facing discrimination and limited opportunities, Marcus had excelled in school, earning a full scholarship to Harvard University. He had gone on to become a successful entrepreneur, founding a technology company that revolutionized medical device manufacture. Over the years, Marcus had built his wealth quietly, preferring to let his work speak for itself rather than seeking public recognition. He had never forgotten the struggles of his youth, and he had made it his mission to create opportunities for others who faced similar challenges. His success had afforded him many luxuries, but the most important thing it had given him was the ability to protect his son from the kind of discrimination he had faced growing up. "You see, Mr. Romano," Marcus continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty, "yesterday evening, my son had an experience in your restaurant that I will never forget. He was ignored, made to feel unwelcome, and ultimately humiliated by your staff. All except for one person. Vincent's face went pale as the implications of the situation began to sink in. Mr. Baptiste, I assure you that if there was any misunderstanding— There was no misunderstanding, Marcus interrupted. Your actions were quite clear. You fired the only employee who treated my son with dignity and respect. You chose to punish kindness and reward prejudice. Kael stepped forward, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. Excuse me, are you Zion's father? Marcus turned, and his face lit up with recognition. You must be Kael. My son hasn't stopped talking about you since last night. He told me about your kindness, your conversation, and how you made him feel welcome when no one else would. How is he? Kael asked, genuinely concerned. I've been worried about him since yesterday. He's doing better now, thanks to you, Marcus replied. But I want you to know that what happened to him, and to you, was completely unacceptable. That's why I've just purchased this restaurant. The words hit Kael like a thunderbolt. You bought Romano's? The sale was finalized an hour ago, Marcus confirmed. Romano's fine dining is now under new ownership, and there are going to be some significant changes around here. Vincent, who had been standing in stunned silence, finally found his voice. This is impossible. You can't just buy a restaurant overnight. There are procedures, inspections, legal requirements, all of which have been satisfied, Marcus said calmly. When you have the right resources and motivation, Mr. Romano, many things that seem impossible become quite achievable. A small crowd had begun to gather outside the restaurant, drawn by the commotion. Several of Romano's employees had come outside to see what was happening, their faces showing a mixture of confusion and concern about their jobs. Mr. Baptiste, Kael said, still struggling to process what he was hearing. I don't understand. Why would you go to such lengths over what happened yesterday? Marcus placed a hand on Kael's shoulder, his expression serious but warm. Let me tell you what my son told me when I picked him up yesterday evening, he said. Daddy, there was a man named Mr. Kael who was nice to me when everyone else pretended I wasn't there. He talked to me like I mattered, and he gave me food when I was hungry. But then another man yelled at him and said mean things about me, and Mr. Kael got fired for being nice to me. Do you know what that did to my heart? Kael shook his head, moved by the emotion in Marcus's voice. My son is 8 years old, and he's already learning that the world can be cruel to people who look like him. But he's also learning that there are people like you who will stand up for what's right, even when it costs them everything. You didn't just feed my son yesterday, Mr. Winters. You fed his soul. You showed him that his worth isn't determined by the color of his skin or the prejudices of others. Tears began to form in Kael's eyes as he understood the true impact of his actions. I just did what felt right. Any decent person would have done the same, but that's where you're wrong, Marcus replied sadly. If any decent person would have done the same, then my son wouldn't have been sitting alone for an hour before you noticed him. The other staff members, the other customers, they all had the same opportunity to show kindness, but they chose indifference instead. Vincent stepped forward, his face red with embarrassment and anger. Now wait just a minute. You're making this about race, but it's not. This is about maintaining standards, about running a business professionally. Stop, Marcus said firmly, his voice cutting through Vincent's protest. Just stop. I've heard enough of your justifications. Yesterday you revealed your true character, and today you're experiencing the consequences. Marcus turned to address the small crowd that had gathered. I want everyone to understand something. This isn't about revenge. This is about creating the kind of establishment where every person, regardless of their background, feels welcome and respected. This is about building a business that reflects the values of dignity and inclusion. One of the other waiters, a young man named Derek, who had always been friendly with Kael, stepped forward. Mr. Baptiste, what does this mean for the rest of us? Are we all going to lose our jobs? They depend entirely on you, Marcus replied. Anyone who shares our commitment to treating all customers with respect and dignity will have a place here. Anyone who doesn't will need to find employment elsewhere. He turned back to Kael. Mr. Winters, I have a proposition for you. I'd like to offer you the position of general manager here at Romano's. You would be responsible for training staff, overseeing operations, and ensuring that every customer receives the kind of treatment you showed my son. Kael's mind reeled. General manager? But I'm just a waiter. I don't have experience running a restaurant. You have something more valuable than experience, Marcus said. You have character. You have the ability to see people as human beings deserving of respect, regardless of their circumstances. That's the kind of leader I want running this establishment. Vincent, who had been growing increasingly agitated, finally exploded. This is insane. You can't just waltz in here and turn everything upside down because your feelings got hurt. This is a business, not a charity. You're absolutely right, Marcus said, calmly. This is a business, and as the new owner, I get to decide how it's run. Mr. Romano, your services are no longer needed. You have 1 hour to clear out your office. The finality of Marcos's words seemed to hit Vincent like a physical blow. He stood there for a moment, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, before the reality of his situation sank in. You can't do this to me, Vincent said, his voice cracking with desperation. My family built this restaurant. This is my life. Your family built a restaurant with excellent food and a beautiful atmosphere, Marcus replied. But they also built a culture of exclusion and prejudice. I'm going to preserve what was good about this place while eliminating what was toxic. As Vincent stormed off, muttering threats about lawsuits and revenge, Marcus turned his attention back to Kael. So, what do you say? Are you ready to help me transform this place? Kael looked around at the faces surrounding him, some supportive, others uncertain, all of them representing lives that would be affected by the changes ahead. He thought about Melody's medical bills, about the opportunity to make a real difference, about the chance to ensure that no other child would experience what Zion had gone through. I don't know if I'm qualified for such a big responsibility, Kael said honestly. But I promise you this, if you give me this chance, I will do everything in my power to make sure this restaurant becomes a place where everyone feels welcome. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile Kael had seen from him since their conversation began. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Welcome to your new job, Mr. Winters. 6 months later, Romano's fine dining had been transformed into something remarkable. Under Kael's leadership, the restaurant maintained its reputation for excellent food and service, while becoming known throughout the city as a place where diversity was celebrated rather than merely tolerated. The staff had been retrained with an emphasis on treating every customer with equal respect and dignity. Several employees who couldn't adapt to the new culture had left, but they were replaced by people who shared Marcus and Kael's vision of inclusive hospitality. The restaurant began hosting community events, scholarship fundraisers, and cultural celebrations that brought together people from all backgrounds. Zion became a regular visitor to the restaurant, often doing his homework at a corner table while his father conducted business meetings. The boy had blossomed under the positive attention, growing more confident and outgoing with each visit. He had also become something of a mascot for the restaurant's transformation, his bright smile and infectious enthusiasm winning over even the most skeptical customers. One evening, as Kael was reviewing the day's receipts, he noticed Zion sitting at his usual table, working on what appeared to be a school project. The boy had grown taller over the past months, and his confidence had grown even more dramatically. "Hey, buddy," Kael said, approaching the table. "What are you working on?" "It's a report about heroes," Zion replied, looking up with a grin. "I'm writing about everyday heroes, people who do the right thing, even when it's hard." "Who sounds like a great topic. Who are you writing about?" "Well, I wrote about my daddy, because he's always fighting for people who need help. And I wrote about you, because you stood up for me when nobody else would. And I wrote about Mrs. Chen, my teacher, because she makes sure all the kids in our class feel included." Kael felt a familiar warmth in his chest. "Those are excellent choices. What did you learn from writing about heroes?" "I learned that heroes aren't just people in movies or comic books. They're regular people who choose to be kind when they could choose to be mean. They're people who stand up for what's right, even when it costs them something." "That's a very wise observation," Kael said, ruffling Zion's hair affectionately. "You know, I think you might be a hero yourself." "Me? I'm just a kid." Heroes come in all ages, Kael replied. You showed courage when you told your father what happened here. You could have stayed quiet, but you spoke up. That helped create all the positive changes we've seen. Zion beamed with pride. Maybe someday I'll be a hero like you and Daddy. I think you already are, Kael said softly. As Kael walked away, he reflected on the incredible journey that had brought him to this moment. The firing that had seemed like a disaster had actually been the beginning of something beautiful. He was now earning 3 times his previous salary, Melody's medical treatment was fully covered, and he was making a real difference in his community. More importantly, he had learned that standing up for what's right, even when it's costly, always leads to something better. The restaurant was thriving, not despite its commitment to inclusion, but because of it. Customers came not just for the food, but for the atmosphere of warmth and acceptance that permeated every interaction. Marcus appeared beside him, having finished his own business meeting. How are things going tonight? Perfectly, Kael replied. We had a full house, everyone left happy, and I just had a beautiful conversation with your son about everyday heroes. Marcus chuckled. He's been talking about that project for weeks. I'm curious to see what he writes about you. He's an amazing kid, Kael said. You should be very proud of him. I am, but I'm also proud of what we've built here together. This place has become something special, and it's because we never compromised on our values. As they stood there watching the bustling restaurant, both men understood that they had created something that went far beyond a successful business. They had created a symbol of what was possible when people chose kindness over prejudice, when they chose to see the humanity in everyone they encountered. The story of Romano's fine dining had become legendary in the city, not just as a tale of business success, but as a powerful reminder that individual actions matter. Kael's decision to show kindness to a lonely child had set in motion a chain of events that changed multiple lives and created a ripple effect of positive change that extended far beyond the restaurant's walls. Vincent Romano, meanwhile, had struggled to find new employment. His reputation in the restaurant industry had been damaged by the public nature of his dismissal, and he had been forced to confront the ugly reality of his own prejudices. Eventually, he had reached out to Marcus, asking for a chance to apologize and make amends. The meeting took place at Romano's on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, with Kael present as a witness. Vincent looked older, humbled by months of unemployment and self-reflection. I want to apologize, Vincent said, his voice barely above a whisper. Not just for what I did to you and your son, but for the years of prejudice and discrimination I allowed to flourish in this restaurant. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. Marcus listened quietly, his expression neutral. I appreciate your apology, Mr. Romano, but I need to know, what changed your mind? Vincent was quiet for a long moment before answering. I have a daughter. She's Zion's age. A few months ago she came home from school crying because some kids had been mean to her new friend, a little boy who had just moved here from Somalia. When I asked her why she was so upset, she said, Daddy, they were being mean to him just because he's different. That's not right, is it? He paused, his voice catching slightly. I realized that I had been teaching her, through my actions, that it was okay to treat people differently based on how they looked. I had been showing her that prejudice was acceptable. I couldn't live with that. Marcus nodded slowly. What are you hoping to accomplish with this apology? I don't expect forgiveness, Vincent said. I just wanted you to know that I understand now how wrong I was. And I wanted to thank you for showing me a better way, even though I didn't deserve it. After Vincent left, Marcus turned to Kael. What did you think of that? I think people can change, Kael replied. I think he's genuinely sorry, and I think he's learned from his mistakes. The question is whether he'll act on that learning. I agree, Marcus said. Change is possible for everyone, but it requires genuine commitment and ongoing effort. As the evening wound down and the last customers departed, Kael found himself standing in the same spot where he had been fired 6 months earlier. The restaurant looked the same, physically, but everything else had changed. The atmosphere was warmer, the staff was more diverse, and the customers represented a beautiful cross-section of the community. Zion appeared at his side, having finished his homework. Mr. Kael, can I ask you something? Of course, buddy. What's on your mind? Do you think what happened to us was meant to happen? Like, do you think it was all part of some bigger plan? Kael considered the question carefully. I think that sometimes bad things happen that lead to good things. I don't know if it's all planned out, but I do know that how we respond to difficult situations can create positive changes. As to when something bad happens to me, I should try to find the good in it? I think you should try to learn from it and use it to help other people, Kael replied. Your experience here helped your father understand that changes needed to be made. Your courage in talking about what happened helped create a better place for everyone. Zion nodded thoughtfully. I'm glad you got fired, Mr. Kael. Kael laughed, surprised by the boy's directness. That's not something you hear every day. Why are you glad? Because if you hadn't gotten fired, Daddy wouldn't have bought the restaurant, and you wouldn't be the manager, and this place wouldn't be as nice as it is now. Sometimes bad things happen, so that better things can happen. As Kael listened to the wisdom coming from this 8-year-old boy, he realized that Zion had understood something profound about the nature of justice and redemption. The child had taken his painful experience and found meaning in it, using it to help others understand the importance of kindness and inclusion. The transformation of Romano's fine dining had become more than just a business success story. It had become a testament to the power of individual choices, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the incredible impact that one act of kindness can have on multiple lives. If you found this story moving, if it reminded you of the importance of treating every person with dignity and respect, then I hope you'll share it with others. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that our actions matter, that kindness is never wasted, and that standing up for what's right can change the world in ways we never imagined. Let me know in the comments how this story affected you, and don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories that remind us of the best in humanity. Because at the end of the day, we all have the power to be someone's hero, just like Kael was for Zion, and just like you can be for someone who needs it today.